So this could really go either way. How's everybody feeling? Are you on my team? Yeah? Good. I see a lot of people that have a very sort of a vaguely literary look, and that bodes well for me. But there seem like there are some unfriendly indie rock snobs here too, so up yours. All right, as by way of preface, several years ago, I took it upon myself to walk from Amsterdam to Istanbul. I say I took it upon myself as though that was something that needed being done. It didn't. Thank you. Thank you. The representative from REI. Thanks. So I did this as part of, my 30-year-old crisis of self, because God knows we all have one of those. Yes, somebody just went, woo! Are you having yours now? Good. Anyway, so I kept a journal that whole time, and now, I don't know what was the ticket price for the show tonight? How much was it? 15 bucks? 20 bucks, right. Okay, now you're going to listen to a 40-year-old man read out of his journal. So hopefully the rest of the show kind of, does some heavy lifting. All right. So I was, as part of the trip across Europe, this is all preface, as part of the trip, I crossed the mountains of Romania, and for a few days I was lost up in the high peaks. And when I came out of the mountains, I was hungry. I hadn't had any food and had been sleeping in the forest. And I came down into this little mining village that was still very high up in the mountains. And it was night when I finally stumbled out of the trees. And there were just a few light bulbs hanging down the middle of the street, but the street was full of people because it was Friday night. And so I'm stumbling through. I was more clean-cut then than I am now, if you can believe it. I come stumbling through, and I'm looking for anyone to, a place to stay, some food, someone to shelter me, because I've had some very trying times, some bad adventures. And this is the story of that night in the town of Rushita, Romania. Is my time up yet? All right. The chief of miners was a tremendous ogre of a man, black-bearded, gap-toothed, full of liquor, as tall as me and twice as broad, who grabbed me merrily by the back of the neck and hauled me out of my chair. He embraced me in a manly, odoriferous hug, and without a further word of explanation, propelled me across the dirt street toward the seemingly abandoned three-story government building I'd noticed before. My translator, the hydroelectric engineer, hurried along beside me, followed by a parade of boys, until we reached the front steps, and the chief of miners scattered them with a wave of his free hand, pushing me through the creaking great front door into the hall. The building didn't just look abandoned. It was deeply, profoundly abandoned in every sense. The tile floor was cracked and crumbled into bits, with mounds of dislodged tile collecting in the corners. The plaster walls were shedding great chunks, and the ceiling was buckling. Worst of all, as the chief of miners led me across the dark hall toward the central staircase, it was obvious that the stairs were rotting and falling apart. From the first floor, I could look up through the broken stairs above me and see all the way through the stairs above that to the open night sky. We picked our way up to the second floor, me carefully putting my feet in the shadow of his between gaping holes in the treads, and then down to the end of the hall, where he opened a door, surprising a motley group of miners sitting around a card table under a single light bulb. They leapt up from their chairs excitedly and crowded around us, taking my pack from my shoulders and manhandling me to a chair by the window. They had strung an electric wire up from across the street through the second-story window and were powering not only the light bulb, but a hot plate as well. The room was large enough for 5 cots, and the men, gnarled and ropey like Joshua trees, had lived there a long while. The chief of miners barked orders around, and his deputy, a thin man with a few wisps of blonde hair and a handful of teeth, immediately set about making dinner. I was so hungry and exhausted that I was caught somewhere between deliriously happy and hallucinating giant lizards a feeling amplified by all the miners crowding around me trying to find out my story and make me comfortable. I have to confess, I was freaked out by the scene. These men, living in this great abandoned hall, were some of the scariest men I have ever met in my life. They had the faces of pirates and the bodies of trolls, and their over-solicitous and gracious manner in welcoming me only amplified their deeply menacing energy. I was their new prize, a pink-skinned, bright-eyed fawn with, at the time, a mouth full of teeth like a string of pearls. They pawed me greedily despite themselves, weighing me with their eyes. My normal confidence at being big and strong and scary-looking myself drained out of me like mercury from a broken thermometer. Their chief was the spitting image of Blackbeard, and he commanded his men with the piratical force of a captain who backed up his threats with violence. His miners obeyed his orders begrudgingly, with much disgruntled growling and seditious mumbling, seemingly held from mutiny only by fear. The blonde deputy was making what can be described only as stone soup. He had a pot going on the hot plate, and he added some potatoes, onions, pebbles, spider webs, grass, ceramic tile, shoelaces, and plywood to whatever was in there already. And soon he was dishing me up a large bowl of stew. I slurped it up with abandon, and then another bowl, much to everyone's delight. What a nice pink piglet I was. They pressed on me beer and liquor from all sides and were dumbfounded when I tried to explain that I never took alcohol. That seemed to cool their ardor a little, perhaps fearing that they had captured a Presbyterian, but I redeemed myself slightly when I happily sat and smoked cigarettes after dinner. They laughed and joked in a rough way with lots of pantomiming and shouting, grabbing me in their calloused hands to make a point or to direct my attention to a joke at another's expense. My pages are sticking together with terror. Like every group of men everywhere in the world, there was one who was a rooster, one who was a goat, there was a dog, a pig, a bull, and a bear. They wanted to entertain me, perhaps as a prelude to eating me, but I kept demurring at the repeated offers of plum brandy and kept miming that I was exhausted and only wanted to rest. Eventually, the deputy broke up the meeting and led me down the hall to my own room as an honored guest. Admittedly, there was no glass in the window frames, and the bed was a stack of fruit crates, covered with straw, held together with a horse blanket coated with flea dung, but to me it was a nest of down. I arranged myself on the pallet so that no wood or straw was poking me in the ribs, and I immediately passed out. I woke to the clatter of my door banging open. Who knows how long I'd been sleeping, and the unmistakable silhouette of Blackbeard, weaving drunkenly, filling the doorway. Before I could focus my eyes or collect my wits, he had closed the distance across the room, pulled my blanket off of me, and began joining me in my bed. Half in an embrace, half as a body slam, accompanied by a foul cloud of stale liquor and dead animals. I yelped, instantly wide awake, terrified that he was the advance man for a drunken Romanian minor pirate gang rape. He threw his arms around me, and I screamed, not unlike a girl. My screaming seemed actually to startle and surprise him, as though he half imagined I would have cooed to him. And he recoiled from me and fell off the bed, slumping to his knees and tenderly shushing me. But I kept shouting, mostly because that's the kind of shouting that once you get started, it's hard to stop. Until the room flooded with sleepy-eyed miners. They lifted up their captain, now drunkenly apologizing and trying to pet me and quiet me down. And they carried him out with much profuse apology. I could hear them bustle him down the hall, crying and babbling explanations until the hall was finally quiet. I stared at the door, wondering how long before something else came crashing through it, and eventually passed out into a fitful sleep until daybreak. Thank you.